Oh man, really quick, yeah. Let's check out this interview, or a part of this interview with Marco Rubio, because I was a little bit taken aback by some of his responses, and I'm curious as to what you guys think about those responses. So Marco Rubio sat down with Megyn Kelly, who isn't really known for her foreign policy expertise. So it's a little bit surprising that she sat down with the Department of State. But she actually asked pretty decent questions. She let Marco Rubio respond in kind.
On the right.
And now, I think that we actually got a decent interview out of it. And I encourage you all to go watch the full interview yourselves. I'm going to check out a part of it here. But we got a decent interview, and we actually got to learn a little bit about how Marco Rubio plans on governing. So, let me put this up for you guys. So we're going to check out this part first.
It's such a tricky time to be Secretary of State, especially as a Republican, because you look at the Republican Party and it's fractured internally about where we should be on foreign policy. It's not like during the Bush years where it was, we were much more neocon-y on the right. And now there's a real division within the right, within MAGA even, on what should we do about Ukraine? There's most of the party, I think, wants nothing to do with that anymore. What kind of saber rattling should we be doing about Iran? There's a large strain that believes none. We should be focused on China, and we should stop demonizing Iran and Russia and keep our eye on our biggest threat. I know you think they're our biggest threat as well. So just give me the 30,000 foot level view of how you're going to navigate that fraction.
Well, I think we spent a lot of time in American politics debating tactics, like what we're going to do, who we're going to sanction, what letter we're going to send or whatever. I think it really has to start with strategy. What is the strategic objective? What's the purpose, the mission? And I think the mission of American foreign policy, and this may sound sort of obvious, but I think it's been lost. The interest of American foreign policy is to further the national interest of the United States of America, right? I mean,
America first.
And that's the way the world has always worked. The way the world has always worked is that the Chinese will do what's in the best interest of China, the Russians will do what's in the best interest of Russia, the Chileans are going to do what's in the best interest of Chile, and the United States needs to do what's in the best interest of the United States. Where our interests align, that's where you have partnerships and alliances. Where our differences are not aligned, that is where the job of diplomacy is to prevent conflict.
Okay, so now do y'all understand, just from that sentence, from that response alone, why I feel like Marco Rubio has been replaced with a body double? That was a very reasonable and diplomatic and judicious response. I don't have any criticisms. That's the news. I don't know. That is the breaking news here. I don't have any criticisms whatsoever. When he was describing Russia, China, Chile, for example, he didn't demonize them, guys. That's bizarre. That is bizarre for Marco Rubio, who is has been historically one of the biggest neocons and has directly participated. I mean, it's talking about Chile, for example. Bro, this dude is known for going out into Latin America and trying to covertly or overtly overthrow governments, or at least help overthrow governments. And the way he responded was like, I respect the fact that these countries are all thinking about their national interests while engaging in international relations. That's how it should be. We're not doing that, and we're not doing that in such a way that it almost comes out as if we don't even have a strategy. We need to be trying where our interests don't align. We need to try to figure out a way that we can figure that out and resolve that without conflict. Bruh, who is this man? Who is this man? This ain't the Marco Rubio that I know. I'm a little bit confused by this. Well, I'm gonna let him cook a little bit. We're gonna let him cook a little bit more. Hold on.
While still furthering our national interest and understanding they're going to further theirs. And that's been lost. And I think that was lost at the end of the Cold War because we're the only power in the world. And so we assume this responsibility of sort of becoming the global government in many cases, trying to solve every problem. And there are terrible things happening in the world. There are. And then there are things that are terrible that impact our national interest directly. and we need to prioritize those again. So it's not normal for the world to simply have a unipolar power. That was an anomaly. It was the product of the end of the Cold War. But eventually you were going to reach back to a point where you had a multipolar world, great powers in different parts of the planet. We face that now with China and to some extent, Russia. And then you have rogue states like Iran and North Korea you have to deal with. So now more than ever, we need to remember that foreign policy should always be about furthering the national interest of the United States, and doing so to the extent possible, avoiding war and armed conflict.
Did this man admit that there is a multipolar world? Did he actually acknowledge that reality? Did he just acknowledge that, yeah, we got to actually figure out how to navigate our differences with other countries without trying to destroy them and blow them into little tiny pieces? Once again, y'all, this is the break. Where is Marco Rubio? I know there's always the running meme online. Oh, that's a clone. That's a clone. Bruh, I don't know. This one might be a clone. Somebody switched out Marco Rubio. Because when I saw this interview, I'm like, I was in the bathroom. I was like brushing my teeth, watching my Facebook shit. And I'm like listening to him talk. And I like around the back, I say, who the fuck is talking? That can't be Marco Rubio. And I'm like trying to look at the interview to verify that it's from like recently, since he's been State Department head. I'm like, cause there's no way that this is the Secretary of State that what? Bruh. These answers are perfect. Now, I don't agree with him calling Iran or North Korea rogue states, but like, that's better than what they've previously referred to them as, which is basically targets to be destroyed. Ellie JJ USA, what's going on, man? Thank you for the super chat. Exactly, Niko. Did you cover the USAID was spending their money on? I can't follow Doge on X. I don't hate Rubio right now. I did cover some of the things that USAID were spending their money on. Yep, I did. I was in the first part. But yeah, y'all. You can't trust Rubio. Of course you don't trust Rubio, but you got to admit this is straight. Somebody said Rubio. Oh my God, Rubio got medicated. Rubio got medicated. He acting like that, right? Like he calmed down a little bit. But this is strange, guys, because this seems to be at odds with Trump's own rhetoric in foreign policy thus far. Would y'all not agree, based on everything that we've already discussed? And we're going to show a little bit more about that. We're going to go into a little bit more detail about that here in a second as we dive a little bit further in this interview. But like, why do you not sound like the guy you working for? It almost, to me, in my opinion. Now, Elon Musk has been taking credit for this whole USAID shutdown. He's been taking credit for basically seeing how foreign aid has been being spent. And he's taking credit for the rolling back of that foreign spending. Based off of what I'm listening to with Marco Rubio in this interview, it sounds like it was actually Marco Rubio's idea, which is why Trump actually put it in his hands to deal with it. Because Marco Rubio sounds like a reasonable person who's not going on Twitter and pushing for or complaining about anti-apartheid policy. But Elon Musk loves to pretend as if he's the guy, so everybody's letting him have it. So we're going to go a little bit more into this interview and listen to another part that I felt like was pretty interesting.
Russia, with China, with Iran. If you try to sort of bully these stronger nations in this way, it's not going to go very well. Is that a fair point?
Well, we're not interested in bullying.
Oh yeah, that was it.
In terms that President Trump's loves is reciprocity. And it's very simple, but I think people would understand it. If you charge us a 50% tariff for an American product to enter your country, we should charge you a 50% tariff here. Maybe 55. President Trump likes to have leverage too. And who would not argue that that's not fair? And how can you argue against it? But that's been our policy in many cases. In country after country around the world, we have no access to their markets, but their products have open and free access to ours. How is
So now this is where you gotta maybe we'll see that he's actually doing more research to figure this out. Why do we not have access to their markets? Because we've been sanctioning them or their allies. And we, for example, when it comes to food, we don't. A lot of our companies don't have access to their markets because our fucking food is poison. Why would they allow that in their country? Some of the products that we send are poison. They're poisonous. Where we're not sending poison policies, we're sanctioning them in other ways. Where we're sanctioning their allies in a way that it makes it harder for them to do business with their allies, which of course leads to higher prices in their country and a negative economic impact. So like, that's where you gotta take a step back and observe, which once again, in all fairness to Rubio at this point, it sounds like he's going to be willing to step back and do so.
How can that continue? That's absurd. I think anybody who has common sense would argue that. Frankly, I think a lot of these leaders have been wondering why it took us so long to figure that out. But under President Trump, they know we have.
The New York Times said, okay.
Also, I want to point out really quick how smart and strategic he's speaking right now. You see how he keeps stroking Trump's ego so that he doesn't seem like he's stepping on his toes. He's making it seem like, yeah, this is all Trump's idea. This is Trump's foreign policy approach. But like we all know, because we've been listening and paying attention, this has not been Trump's foreign policy approach. He's been opposite of all this. He's been on some shit lately. This whole last 2 weeks, really. So, but he's being very strategic and he's not stepping on Trump's toes in this interview. It's once again, this is the news. This is the breaking news. I don't know what the hell, who this guy is, but it don't sound like Marco Rubio.
You guys got away with this with Colombia, but you're not going to be able to pull that trick with Russia, with China, with Iran. If you try to sort of bully these stronger nations in this way, it's not going to go very well. Is that a fair point?
Well, we're not interested in bullying anybody, and we don't feel like we bullied Colombia. We feel like we had a deal. Colombia signed a deal. They signed a piece of paper that said, yes, send us these airplanes, and then halfway into the flight, they broke it. And so our answer was, well, now we flew these planes. We had to bring them back to the United States. So now you're going to come pick them up. Why are we going to pay for those flights? Because you canceled them. It's not bullying. It's they broke a contract that we had made with them. Obviously, look, China has nuclear weapons. They're tough people. There's no doubt about it. They're tough people, have nuclear weapons. They're a great power with a large economy. They're going to be a global power, but it can't come at our expense. And so ultimately, when you're dealing with great powers like China, it's going to be at the highest levels of their president and ours, or their premier and ours, and our president. And that interaction will happen. In the case of Russia, the same. Obviously, there's going to be, whatever happens with Russia will be a Putin-Trump dynamic. But I think most certainly, sure. I mean, the world is the way you treat, not the way you treat countries, but the way you approach a nation has to be based on the strategic balance. But I don't view that we bullied Colombia, nor do I think these articles about, oh, they're going to turn to China. That's absurd. That's an absurd argument. I think the overwhelming majority of people in Colombia, a country I know very well, don't even like their president.
Let's be real, my guy. You stop doing that. Rubio, just because you're fucking a Cuban expat, basically, doesn't mean you know every Latino in every country, bro. Like, I don't know why I even have to say that, but he pulls that shit a lot. Him and Ted Cruz. It's a country I know very well. Why? Because you speak Spanish and your last name is Rubio? Boy, stop. Man, or probably because he tried to help overthrow the government, so I guess he would know enough about that.
President. I mean, this guy had an election today, he would lose. Well, he'd lose. I mean, he's unpopular in Colombia. I mean, that's not up to us. People there will get to vote and they'll decide who they want to lead them.
You see what I'm talking about? Where's Marco? That's up to the people of Colombia. I mean, yeah, that's true. But since when? I mean, do y'all see what I'm saying? He can have his opinion about the president. He can say whatever he says about how he feels people support him. But the caveat after, well, yeah, but either way, that's up to the people of Colombia to decide. It's not for us to decide. Whoa, what? That's a weird caveat to say. To make it known that you are going to stay out of their business in that regard is very un-Marco Rubio-like. And once again, it seems to be the opposite of how Trump is going about his business, at least rhetorically speaking. Where is Marco Rubio? You don't never miss. Marco Rubio, guys, doesn't ever miss an opportunity to try and overthrow a government in Central South America. Never, guys. And in that situation, normally, what he would make the comments that he made about how he feels about the president, and if he feels like they broke their contract, and I'm not sure what exactly happened there, because I knew that there was a deal that was made, and it looked like that Colombia had actually gotten a big victory, making sure that the Colombians were being sent back in a dignified fashion, that they weren't being abused, and that nobody got lost in transit, because y'all know how that goes with ICE. So I don't know what happened there, but even still, if he's going to make a negative comment about a country with a leftist president, generally speaking, he's not in a rush. He's not pressed to make a comment to say, but look, man, we're going to let the people decide how that turns out. We're going to let the people decide the outcome of that election. He will never do that. He said, we're going to do what we're going to do what we got to do. That's usually what he says. Look, man, I'm going to let him cook for a little bit more. I just need y'all to make sure I'm not crazy, guys, because I was totally caught off guard by this interview. It's super reasonable, incoherent. I'm convinced he's funny.
But I think a lot of their people in their business class are like, what's this guy doing? This is absurd. I mean, it's normal that we were deporting people to Colombia just like we deport people to every country in the world. And by the way, if they're illegal American immigrants in another country, we would have to accept them coming this way.
Right.
So I don't pay a lot of attention. Most of the people, unfortunately, that opine on the more I have been delved into foreign policy and the more I read people who claim to know about foreign policy, the more I realize that a lot of the people we believe are experts have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah. Did he just say a lie right there? I don't think so. I think that he just said exactly what we be saying all the time. The people who claim to be experts have no idea. I know this might seem crazy, but do y'all think that Marco Rubio is actually just, I mean, I know he was not the smartest guy in the world, but I assume that he was actually was more or less intelligent and was purposely allowing himself to be used because it was convenient for him, in the same way that a lot of these people allow themselves to be used. Could it be that this whole time Marco Rubio was actually an idiot who actually believed the foreign policy experts and he thought that they were being genuine in trying to serve the interests of the United States? Does he actually, do you think that he believed that when he was engaging in all these attempts to overthrow governments in Central South America? Because that's what it sounded like. The way he said that, he believed that shit, what he just said right now, y'all. He believed that. I'm at a loss for words because I agree with them. The majority of U.S. foreign policy experts, Matt does, Bernie, you need to get rid of that motherfucker. But the majority of foreign policy experts actually don't know about foreign policy, and it's like I just said a few minutes ago. I said, is when he got this job, did he just sit down and start actually studying U.S. foreign policy, but not at a superficial level, right? Because you have to, when you are a senator or a congressperson, you have a certain level of dedication and focus on your particular committee, and then even within that, you have another level of focus on legislation that you're working on or what you've been assigned to work on by your party, and then of course you got your staff that is probably doing the majority of that work for you. Especially somebody like Marco Rubio, who's probably spending most of his time in good old sunshine in Florida. Okay, so as Secretary of State, he's getting information and doing deep dives that he's never had to do before. And I feel like he's accidentally being woken up to the reality of what's happening around. Before, the way he would talk about China, it was like, man, who the fuck cares about China? Well, we can do what we want to. I don't care about Russia. We got the money. We got the power. We're the ones in charge. Actually, so it's actually a multipolar world. Do y'all understand how big of a deal that is? The fact that he said the us being the singular superpower after World War II is an anomaly that will never happen again, and we are living in a multipolar world, and we have to lead that way or behave that way going forward, or we're going to pay the price. I don't know a politician who has served or is serving in Washington, and I damn sure don't know one that is a part of this administration who has been openly willing to admit that. Because that would admit that that's like giving legitimacy to BRICS, right? That's giving legitimacy to what Putin has said. That's giving legitimacy to what Xi Jinping has said. And other world leaders, the leaders that we have considered, the United States at least, has considered to be adversarial. The leaders that they have tried to pretend are economically and militarily irrelevant. They know they're not, but they've tried to pretend that way. They've been trying to pretend that they are to maintain the illusion that the United States is the singular power that is still in control. Marco Rubio is basically coming out and saying, yeah, I don't know who keeps telling you that's bullshit. I got the receipts. We are not the superpower anymore. That is not some small statement that he made, guys. That is not a small statement. It is not insignificant. Body double. I don't know. He got to be cloned. Or God forbid, he did some research for once.
There's a large delta. What about, you mentioned China. Did you recently have a call with the foreign minister? And there was a report that you received a sort of warning that you needed to basically watch
somebody
yourself.
told me that, and that's so two things that the game that they play. Number one is they put out an English translation and they put out a Chinese translation, and they don't always overlap. The call was very straightforward, and I basically said, you're acting in the best interest of China, we're going to act in the best interest of America.
First of all, so he almost, I don't know if y'all caught that. He said they always, because he was about to try and say, like, oh, it's Chinese propaganda. He was going to try to do that. And he was like, oh, hold on. Double back. No, it could be a mistranslation. Did y'all catch that? Look.
You received a sort of warning that you needed to basically watch
somebody
yourself.
told me that, and that's so two things that the game that they play. Number one is they put out an English translation and they put out a Chinese translation, and they don't always overlap. The call was very straightforward, and I basically said, you're acting in the best interest of China, we're going to act in the best interest of America. We're two great powers, and in areas where we can work together, there's probably no problem in the world we couldn't solve working together. In areas where we have disagreements, we have a responsibility to manage it so it doesn't escalate into something catastrophic. But be clear that we're going to do these things. I did not, at least the translator that was on the call, did not say anything to me that I felt was over the top. But then they put out these games. They like to play these games. They put out these translations where it says one thing in English and then it's translated in they use a different term in Mandarin. So he was warned not to overstep himself. They never said that. And if they had, I would have told them, well, I would say the same to you. Don't overstep either. And, but that didn't happen, at least not on the call, or at least maybe their interpreter didn't want to interpret it that way. But that was not the readout we got. But it's silly and irrespective and irrelevant. What really matters is the decisions we make moving forward. And, China wants to be the most powerful country in the world, and they want to do so at our expense. And that's not in our national interest. And we're going to address it. We don't want a war over it, but we're going to address it.
Well, that.
Yeah, once again, super reasonable response. Like she gave him an opening. Like, yeah, man, somebody said that they was out there testing your gangster, man. Somebody said that you ain't really like that. Man, you can't believe everything you hear on TV, bro. Like, maybe it was like a mistranslation. Somebody said this and then somebody said that. Nah, man. But based off of our understanding, we knew what we were trying to say, and that's what's most important. And what also was most important is how we behave with and interact going forward. That's all I'm concerned with. The drama, the he say, she say, I'm not here for it. I'm here for actions. And he is correct. I want to be clear about that. China is definitely trying to be the strongest superpower in the world, and they are trying. They don't give a damn if they got to do so at the U.S.'s expense, and probably for good reason. And I'm also not surprised that the U.S. would respond in kind. Now, if the U.S. wants to actually, if they want to be the strongest superpower in the world, not just in name only, you need to do what China has done, which is start addressing the economics at home. Because that is when and how the United States become the strongest superpower in the world. When you had the strongest middle class, that is how you dominate. When people don't have to worry about how they're going to pay for their insulin, where their food is going to come from, when they're not overworked and underserved. Like, it's okay to acknowledge that China wants to be the strongest superpower in the world. It's also okay to acknowledge that it makes sense that the United States will want to remain the strongest superpower in the world and act in their best interest. But he is correct in the sense that there shouldn't be a war over it. And that is largely the burden of the United States to bear, because if there is a war started because of that, it would be because the United States starts it. And I think that was what he was kind of referring to. Like, look, cool, they got to do what they got to do. We're going to do what we got to do. But what we're not going to do is start letting off shots. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, who is this guy? That is the conclusion. Who is this man? Listen, so we're gonna compare what he's been on. So let's just look at something that Trump said recently. This is about Israel, if I'm not mistaken.
It's a small country in terms of land. See this pen, this wonderful pen? My desk is the Middle East. And this pen, the top of the pen, that's Israel. That's not good, right? You know, it's a pretty big difference. I use that as an analogy. It's pretty accurate, actually.
I use that analogy. It's pretty accurate, actually. Yeah. Drax has y'all see. I'm assuming the majority of y'all have seen Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Whenever Drax uses an analogy or the metaphor, I can't remember which one. Oh yeah, there was an analogy. He used an analogy that Mantis gave him, and then he was like, "Wow." Peter was like, "I didn't know that you were capable of analogy." He's like, "What? I know lots of analogies, Quill. Analogies, metaphors, etc." That's analogy, man. It's pretty accurate, to be honest. If your analogy is accurate, first of all, you don't gotta tell people that it's accurate.
Pretty small piece of land. And it's amazing that they've been able to do what they've been able to do when you think about it. It's a lot of good, smart brain power.
Just because y'all
but it is a very small piece of land, no question about it.
So this was in response to Israel's actions regarding the confiscation, the outright theft of land in not only Gaza, but what they're doing in the West Bank, and their intentions on grabbing more land in Lebanon and even what they've already grabbed in Syria. So he's like, yeah, man, for sure. We're cool with them taking more land, even if that could actually end up being against the interests of the American people. Because we know that despite what Israel would have you believe, the majority of what they've done actually has acted against the interests of both Europe and the United States. I don't give a damn what nobody says. Just look at all the turmoil that's happening in both of those areas. The immigration problems that we see are because of who? Like, as far as the Arab, the Desi, the Persian population, even in Africa, Israel's been involved in Africa. So the massive immigration and the conflict that has come because of it is largely because of Israel. The wars that we fought in the Middle East, the lives that have been lost in the Middle East, have largely been on Israel's behalf. And instead, don't get me twisted. I'm pretty sure Marco Rubio would likely justify in some way, form, or fashion whatever Israel does. But I'm just giving an example of how this, because this isn't the only thing that Trump has been on some, like, whatever Israel does, we're cool with it, even if it hurts America's interests. Whatever, we're going to talk about South Africa. We're going to get involved in South Africa. Marco Rubio is talking about how we have to do whatever we can to prevent military conflict, while Trump and Elon are threatening to send troops to Greenland. People. Right? Okay, you see what I'm saying? Like, I don't even know if these two are on the same page necessarily. I think in some ways they are on the same page, but I do think that where they are on the same page, it's actually not them being on the same page. It's Trump basically outsourcing certain foreign policy issues directly to Marco Rubio because he doesn't know what's going on, and it's kind of, that's Trump. So he's like, hey, man, you deal with it. I don't want to deal with it. I think that's basically what's been happening. Even with that China, he's like, I had a call with the foreign minister of China. Trump and China they be going back and forth with the rhetoric, guys. But Marco Rubio is like, look, man, hey man, we're just trying to. Y'all want to be the powerful? We gonna compete. Okay, cool. We can competition is okay, but we gotta do so legitimately, and we gotta do so avoiding war. That is not the shit that Trump be on. We all know that. That's not even what Biden be on. Trump out here threatening to sanction South Africa with what money? I don't know, because South Africa already came out and said we don't need your money, so I don't know. And y'all don't give us money like that. So I don't know why you thought that was a good idea, but okay. Like, guys, who is this man? Where is Marco Rubio at? I don't want to have, like, don't give me false hope, guys. It's been a hard goddamn 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. And if, I'm only 30. This is my last December I turned 30 again for the 6th time. So, I'm only 30 years old. So if you've been alive longer than that, it's been a long few decades. I don't want to have no false hope that we're going to have somebody with common sense at the State Department. We've never in my lifetime had someone with a remote, we've never had anyone remotely coherent, remotely reserved, remotely democratic as the head of the State Department. In my lifetime, and go ahead and add another 30 years on there, and we still haven't had someone remotely democratic as State Department head. Like, do y'all understand? And this is probably like the wildest statement that I might make probably until tomorrow, depending on what, because this is the Trump administration, so you never know. But guys, based off of that interview alone, and what we have seen from Marco, reserving, we're not giving foreign aid to a motherfucking soul for the next 90 days until we figure out who the hell is getting our money and what we're spending it on. Like, okay, I'm kind of full. I'm cool with that. Like, cool, bet. All right. We need to stop that shit. Like, Marco Rubio is he the most sane, not shitty State Department head that we've had in my lifetime? Is that what's happening right now? What kind of bizarro world are we living in? Where the Republican Department of State, ladies and gentlemen, is the rational mind trying to diplomatically work things out with China. Where the Republican Department of State is saying, yeah, I might disagree with the government, but hey, that's for the people to decide. I'm not about to get involved. If they want to get him out, they'll get him out. If he had election day, he would lose. But hey, that's for them to decide. What? Y'all know how crazy that is? It's a little sad. It's scary because that means that our Secretary of States have been absolutely horrendous. But I'm almost okay. Once again, this is based off this interview and some of the things that have happened the last few days. Okay, the last few days. I'm almost liking him better as Secretary of State than I'm liking the potential of Tulsi being DNI. Now, if Tulsi is actually opens herself up to allow information to flow to her and accept it, the truth for what it is, like Marco Rubio is apparently being able to do, then we could actually see some crazy shit happen in the next 4 years, regardless of the stupidity from Donald Trump and Elon Musk, who can't put his fucking phone down for lack of attention. Like, if Marco can actually sit down with Tulsi and they can have a genuine conversation without her bias against Muslims and Arabs, and if we could somehow, which is probably the hardest part, if we could somehow tell Bibi, here's a good thing, Bibi Netanyahu, we don't know what's going to happen with him, because you got to remember, he's in the middle of a corruption hearing. We don't know what's going to happen with him. He could be out of the picture soon. And Israel they're trying to find their own way to restore some level of stability within the country, which could put it's not going to end the genocide, but it's going to stall a little bit because they're trying to figure out how they're going to proceed going forward post Bibi, because they're imploding. For those of you who don't know, Israel is imploding right now. Bibi got people walking out on him like they got their own shit to deal with. So if we can keep Israel out of our business and Rubio continues this level of approach, and once again, in Tulsi does not remain gullible and, to be quite frank, Islamophobic, I feel like they could actually work together to not be shitty, to like maybe not have us involved in a war because it's like World War III, maybe not. Like, that's a possibility, guys. Like, I mean, it's if Marco Rubio could change, not even change, because it's like I said, I don't know if you call it change or educate himself, because it sounds like it just sounds, the way that he's like, man, I just learned that, like, some foreign policy experts have never actually been fucking foreign policy experts. They're all idiots. Most of them have no idea what they're talking about, and I'm figuring that out right now because he has access to information he's never had before. And now his job is on the line, right? He doesn't want his legacy to be he's always been concerned about his legacy. Marco Rubio has. That's obvious, I feel like. This is the first, as State Department, I've always said, State Department, at least officially, is probably the second most powerful position in the world, but in reality, it's probably the most powerful position in the world. Because you control U.S. foreign policy to a degree that the president is not always involved in. And they're confiding in you more because the president still has to worry about domestic policy in a way the State Department doesn't have to worry about that. But as the person who's in charge of U.S. foreign policy, in a lot of ways, you control the outcome of domestic policy through international relationships, or through fostering international relationships and diplomacy. So, like, this is kind of crazy, y'all. Like, we already heard what there was a little bit too late for that, but we're supposed to be pulling out of Syria, supposedly. I'm sure the ICE is gonna find their way there somehow if it already hasn't happened. But supposedly we're gonna pull out of Syria. We're engaging in diplomacy with China now. Apparently, some tariffs that Trump had I'm about to do some tariffs. Apparently, he actually just backtracked, and that seems to be because of Marco Rubio. Some of those tariffs. Marco Rubio isn't making dumbass statements about South Africa. He's out here and he's not threatening governments to overthrow them. He's mentioned multiple times in this interview, we don't need to go to war, y'all. We need to not be at war. We need to not go to war. And then Marco Rubio has also acknowledged the fact that we now live in a multipolar world, which means that he is already operating at a level separate from almost 99% of Washington, D.C. The simple acknowledgement of that means that you're strategically ahead of 99% of politicians in Washington, D.C. people. I feel like that's not an insane statement. Marco Rubio, guys. And this is not necessarily elogiating Marco Rubio as much as it is an indictment of leftists or people who claim to be leftists. Marco Rubio is ahead of Bernie right now. He is ahead of Ilhan Omar. He is ahead of AOC. He is advanced his understanding of where we are as a country in respect to the rest of the world than everyone who claims to be leftist and claims to be a foreign policy expert who's worked on these intelligence committees. Do you understand? That is significant, guys. That is significant. So does that mean now that we will see people like Bernie Sanders maybe step their game up? Do you think that could potentially happen? I don't know. We're in uncharted territory here, guys. Didn't expect the best goddamn State Department head in my generation to be a fucking Republican who was a neocon. Now I'm kind of confused as to why they think, like, I'm like, damn, bro, y'all barely passed RFK 14 to 13. And everybody was just, yep, sure, Marco Rubio. But now I'm thinking like, shit, y'all let this man be the State Department head. The neocons of the Republican Party and the neocons of the Democratic Party let this guy who's like, yeah, man, we should definitely negotiate and engage in diplomacy with China more than anything. We should not be going to war. Bro, I need to check we need to check these damn these arms stocks. These arms, like, cause these weapons manufacturers, I know they was not happy listening to that interview, guys. There's no way. Given what we're seeing now with Ukraine, like I gotta assume now that a lot of that is because of Marco Rubio, because Trump is kind of like about Ukraine, but 90-day freeze, and now we don't have to guess whether or not that 90-day freeze impacted Ukraine, because sometimes they'll lie and say like, oh yeah, no, like it impacted them, but not. No, they came out and started begging for money. Zelensky did an interview saying like, oh man, we don't got no more money, dog, help us out. So like, no, he really did take that money from these motherfuckers. That really happened. So now, what is going to be the excuse for the progressives who have an opportunity to work alongside Marco Rubio and help further the United States status in a positive, diplomatic way in this new multipolar world that Marco Rubio, of all people, finally admits that we are living in? Man, I don't know what the hell going on. What a time to be alive.